Here recently, I've seen a lot of like commercials and teasers leading up to like commercials for the Super Bowl.
Right.
Why is that?
You know, in the past, you never saw teasers, you never saw previews,
Yeah.
you never saw sneak peeks. I'm talking about if you even went back to, not that far back, I mean, if you went back to even 4 or 5 years ago, the Super Bowl commercials were the most anticipated commercials of the year, and they still are.
Yeah.
But what made them really anticipated, or what made them really such a big deal and so grandiloquently hyped up, was the fact that nobody knew what they were going to see. It was all hush-hush. It was this ta-da moment of unveiling all these commercials during the big game. But over the last few years, gradually and increasingly, these companies are, quote-unquote, leaking out, and I say with air quotes because they kind of started just putting it out there in social media, on YouTube, as if the cat was out of the bag, and getting people a chance to have a look at the commercials in advance. And now it's come to such a stage where they've even forgotten about trying to make it an orchestrated leakage. They just blatantly let it out, and they give us previews almost like movie trailers.
Yeah.
Like, Avengers coming, next summer. So all these companies now give us these previews and trailers
For a commercial.
of commercials.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, that's pretty ironic. We're talking about commercials about commercials.
That's weird.
And it is weird, but that tells you the power of Super Bowl advertising, because it's worth it for them to have commercials to pique our interests and tease us and get us to look forward to watching the commercials, the actual commercials.
Yeah.
And why is that? It's because of social media. If you ask me, over the last few years, that's the big difference. Companies have now realized that the ta-da factor is big, but it's almost more beneficial to them. They get an even bigger bang for their buck by forgetting about the huge unveiling factor and the ta-da factor, but instead kind of feeding the frenzy, if you will, and creating the suspense and the dialogue and the engagement a month in advance, 3 weeks in advance, 2 weeks in advance, and they like to build it up to the crescendo of the actual commercial during the Super Bowl. So it's all about shares and views and YouTube and Facebook and tweeting about these commercials, and that's where the companies are really maximizing their leverage and getting way more than the $4 million that they're actually spending on that 30-second spot. In fact, one interesting fact that I just read, and this was released by a company called Unruly Media, and some of the statistics they found was interesting. Apparently, the number of shares online have increased from 2012 to 2013 by double or twice. That means they've doubled. That means if they post, and that'll be more than double even this time in 2014, the point being that if companies can post these teasers and sneak previews, they get shared so many times, and these shares lead to multiple views, and that's where the gravy lies in Super Bowl advertising nowadays. That's why all these so-called sneak peeks, trailers, previews, commercials about commercials.
Well, you said it was a good idea, but have you seen any like good ones coming up to the Super Bowl?
Have I seen any good ones? It's probably a matter of opinion, but I think there are some good ones this time. Just to give you an idea, out of the 50 spots that you will see on February 2nd during the game, right? Let's say approximately 50 spots. There are already, as of today, which is about still a week away from the Super Bowl, there are about 22 sneak peeks or trailers or previews. So in other words, almost half the commercials are either already out there or there's some kind of a sneak preview or trailer about it. So that's a lot. That's getting up to almost 50%,
Yeah.
right? And by the time we get to the Super Bowl, it's probably going to be 70% of those will be already out there. Now, let's see, which are some of the good ones I saw? You might want to check out the Volkswagen one. I thought that was really interesting. They've given us a sneak peek at how they're working on a Super Bowl commercial. So it's German engineering and how bad they are at coming up with Super Bowl commercials, but it talks about the anatomy of, or the formulaic way that Super Bowl commercials are made. It's a nice parody. It's done pretty well. It's good production value. So that's one. Butterfingers. You'll see Mr. Peanut and Mrs. Chocolate in a what looks like a marriage therapy or sex therapy session. I'll just leave it at that. Makes for interesting viewing. Okay, that's one to look for. There's quite a few. Bud Light has a series of sneak peeks and trailers with Arnold Schwarzenegger warming up for a ping pong game, and let's just say it's pretty bizarre, but the whole tagline is, "Are you ready for whatever is coming?" So we'll see what's coming and how Arnold Schwarzenegger comes into play. And so, as you can see, there's all kinds of interesting trailers and sneak peeks, and these are the 3 or 4 that I thought were pretty interesting, but there's quite a few more, so we're checking them out.
Yeah.